If you want to know how I went from $10 an hour to growing a multi-million-dollar HVAC, plumbing, and electrical business, stick around.
Entrepreneur with dirt on my boots, building dreams instead of chasing suits. Freedom paid in sweat and time, a life that's rough but truly mine.
Welcome back to the Tradepreneur Show. I'm your host, Patrick Summers, and today I'm doing something a little different. Instead of interviewing another entrepreneur, I'm sharing my own story. People often see the business today, the trucks, the team, the growth, but what they don't see are the years that came before it. They don't see my past. They don't see the mistakes, the setbacks, or the jobs that taught me lessons I still use every day. This isn't just my story, it's proof that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. So let's rewind and go back in time to the beginning. Like a lot of people, I grew up and I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a firefighter since I was a little kid. And you know what? I ended up becoming a volunteer firefighter. I was a rescue recovery diver. I did high-angle rescue. I did all that stuff. It was fantastic. And I looked at going into a paid position. And at the same time, I had this desire for business. So I think those two things conflicted a little bit, where I wanted to be in the fire service and I wanted to start my own business. And perhaps that led me to floundering a little bit and doing almost every job under the sun. I have done work from bussing tables, washing dishes, all that good stuff. But got out of high school and I was an orthopedic tech, believe it or not, at a hospital. And at this time I was kind of looking to go into nursing, being a trauma nurse. And so I worked at a hospital. I worked at 3 different hospitals because I moved to different places. And the last hospital I worked at, Payroll Memorial Hospital, is where I met my wife. She was a phlebotomist. She's a nurse now. But it was outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. And I had gotten a job there as security part-time engineering department. And the whole idea was to have that job while I went into the fire academy or even the police academy. So I was applying all over. It was very difficult to get jobs. There was a lot of waiting lists, and it just got exhausting. So my desire to be in business kind of took over. And I ended up, my wife and I, moving to Florida, and I ran an unloading service. I started unloading trucks at public supermarkets in their Jacksonville distribution warehouse. I'd go in and throw 44,000 pounds of beef in 45 minutes, off the floor, palletized, and I just busted my butt. You know, the lesson from my father about show up every day as an owner, as if you own the business, with that mindset and mentality. When you go to work for somebody, you have an agreement, and that agreement is sealed by the money they offer you and your acceptance of that money. And if you are offered that money and you say yes to it, your part of the agreement is you will give them 110% of what you have to give. Their part of the agreement is they will pay you exactly what you agreed to. And if somebody else comes along and you find out somebody else is making more money than you and you feel it's unfair and you want more money, you have to understand, you made your agreement and that person made their agreement. The two have nothing to do with each other. The only thing that you have to stand on is what you do and what you deliver to that employer to make their life better, to make the business better, to make the company profitable. And if you can prove that and you can demonstrate that, now you can go and renegotiate what you feel you're worth, regardless of what the person to your left or your person to your right's agreement says. So if you want more money, remember, you've got to give 110% and you've got to deliver a return to that business. Talking about business here, mindset, and how I became a business owner. If you want to learn more about the mindset and some of the superpowers you can employ today, go back and check out my episode on Yes and. So I took that philosophy into this unloading service, and before you know it, I was running the grocery department, the dairy department, the produce department, and frozen foods. We ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, unloading freight. The only day we shut down was Christmas. So I did that, and then that led me into driving a truck. Yeah, driving a truck, a tractor trailer, coast to coast. I ran teams with my dad. We wanted to buy some trucks and lease them onto a carrier, so we figured let's go out and run our own truck. We drove for a company and see how we can do this as if it's our own business. Anyways, determined that that probably wasn't the thing we wanted to do, because if you're at home and you got a truck 3,000 miles away and it's got a flat tire, your driver gets mad and decides he doesn't want to work for you anymore. It just wasn't appealing to me at the time. But I love the trucking industry. Just didn't take that route. So anyways, I've done road service, truck tire repair. I would go out and change tires on the side of the freeway for tractor trailers. I've done painting. I've done landscaping. Like many of you listening to this, I've done quite a bit of different jobs trying to find my way. I was a trauma tech. Man, I did it all. And then I got married and I started having kids. But before that, I got into dry cleaning. Now, how did I get into dry cleaning, you might ask? Well, I ask myself that question still to this day. But the simple answer is, I had a cousin whose husband did equipment lease financing. He specialized in the dry cleaning industry. Anyways, he ended up in California. He bought a cleaners, and he asked me to come out and help run it. And I did. About 6 months into that, decided he probably shouldn't have bought the cleaners, because he had his own thing going on, his own business with the financing, and he sold it. So now I'm out here. Fortunately, my wife's a nurse at this time. She gets a job at the local hospital. She's good. Me, what do I do? While I'm working at this cleaners, and then we're out, we sell it. I went to work security because I'd worked security before at the hospital my wife was working at. Meanwhile, I figured out I'm going to start my own dry cleaning business. Well, I didn't have the means or the ability to buy my own dry cleaning plant, and there were none available. So I bought a van, and I did pickup and delivery, and I wholesaled the work out. And I did that. And lo and behold, I was eventually able to buy my own plant in the town of Palm Springs. And I did that for 10 years. I ran a dry cleaning plant, my own. I did pickup and delivery. And at the end of the day, I bought myself a job. You basically, unless you can scale your dry cleaners, you buy yourself a job. I hated almost every day of it. What I loved was the business side of it. I had to buy the business. And then when I sold the business, I had to sell the business. I had to do all payroll. I had to do all of the business stuff, but I hated it. But it taught me how to work on equipment. When I say how to work on equipment, how to fix dry cleaning equipment. And I found out I really enjoyed it. Long story short, the economy tanked. 2008, 2009, remember those days? Well, if you want to know how the economy's doing, ask your dry cleaner. Because I had people that were selling real estate, and now they were waiting tables. I had people that were coming in 2 times a week. Now they were coming in once a week or once every other week, and they were bringing half the amount of clothes in that they brought before. I had people that were driving certain types of cars, were now driving different types of cars. And I knew something was up, and I was able to put my cleaners up for sale, and I was able to sell it to pay all the debt I had. I didn't make a dime off of it, but I was able to pay all my debt. I wasn't able to repay myself the money I lost when I couldn't make payroll and I had to touch my retirement that I had started, or I had to touch a savings account I had, but I at least didn't owe anybody money. But what I found out was I enjoyed working on stuff, and I figured I'm going to go to school for refrigeration, air conditioning, because dry cleaning machines have refrigeration units on them, and I don't know how to work on refrigeration units. I knew the rest of the stuff. I had figured the rest of the stuff out. So I started going to school at night. I was going to go sell and service dry cleaning equipment. I had it all figured out. Just had to get the refrigeration side down. Well, I'm talking to people I know still in the industry, and one of them is a sales guy, sells supplies. He's like, I pulled up in front of this cleaners, and all his equipment was in the parking lot. The place was empty. The landlord pulled the equipment out. He abandoned the place. Places were closing. Nobody was buying equipment. Nobody was fixing equipment. Nobody was opening new locations. And I'm like, wow, this isn't very good. Now, keep in mind, I've got 2 kids at this point in time. Actually, I'm sorry, 3 kids, because there's twins. So I had my oldest, and then I had a set of twins. I needed to do something, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to start. I wrote down my goals, family goals, financial goals, career goals, spiritual goals, and I still have the napkin I wrote them on. And it was one day coming home from school. And one of them was to work 5 years at an HVAC company, get enough experience to start my own business. Because you got to keep in mind, if you're listening to this, you can probably relate if you're somebody that wants to start a business. You want to start a business. You want the American dream of being an entrepreneur and a business owner, and you have no idea how you're going to get there. You think, how am I going to get a loan? I can't finance a ham sandwich. How am I going to get the experience? How am I going to get customers? While I've worked in businesses and worked in management roles, I had to shop for insurance for my dry cleaners, but that was pretty easy. When you talk opening a trade business, especially one that's highly regulated by the state, it's a little different story, and one that's capital intensive if you want to scale. So anyways, I thought, what am I going to do? My goal is I'm going to start a business. I need to get 5 years experience to get my contractor's license. I'm in the state of California, remember, the land of nut jobs and granola bars. So I'm in California. The regulations are crazy. I got to get my 5 years. Not that that's crazy. That's good. But I'm like, I've got to get 5 years. Now, look, I'm no spring chicken at this time. You know, I had spent my whole life making $500 a week, jumping from this job to this job, chasing the dream, chasing the dream, chasing the dream. I never gave up on that dream. Never gave up on that dream. And let me tell you something. You know, these people that say, I'm going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, it's going to be a train. If you have anybody in your life that says that, send them down the road, because that's not the person you need. And I knew I was going to see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I knew it was going to be the end of the tunnel that was going to open up into a beautiful pasture of opportunity. So how am I going to get 5 years experience? Well, I'm going to get a job in the trades. I answered an ad. Check this out. I answered an ad on Craigslist for an entry-level maintenance technician, $10 an hour. Now, thank God my wife's a nurse, but still, this day and age, that wasn't cutting it, especially the way I eat. So I came in, I interviewed. It was General Heating and Air at the time. And I had a group interview. It was a company meeting, and I stood up, and there's another guy much more experienced than me. I was in the middle of trade school. I hadn't even finished trade school yet. And we had to stand up and present ourselves and tell them why we wanted to come work for the General. And so I left there, and I remember telling my wife, I don't know, this other guy's got a lot of experience. I don't have any experience. I don't know why they'd hire a guy in trade school over somebody with experience. Well, lo and behold, I get the call. They didn't hire the other guy. I went in, I sat in the office. It is my office now. It was Frank Harrison, and he said, Patrick, I'd like to offer you a job. And he said to me, it only pays $10 an hour, but there's other ways to make money, bonuses and things like that. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I have never taken a job for the money. I've always taken a job for the opportunity. And when I looked back at all the jobs I've done, every one of them was chasing opportunity. It wasn't chasing money, it was chasing opportunity. And I think one of the biggest lessons you have to take, if nothing else, if you chase money, you will always chase money. Money comes and goes. Money is influenced by the energy you create, all right? You want money, create the right energy, you will get the money. And if you chase money, you will be a slave to money, and you will chase money your entire life. If you pursue opportunity, you will find opportunity, and money will come. Money will just be one of the components of what you get. So chase opportunity, don't chase money. So I chased opportunity. I finally got the opportunity. And that lesson my father taught me, you get paid and you accept what you agree to, and you give 110% of yourself. Show up every day like the owner. And I did that in so many jobs. And I eventually promoted to a point where I couldn't promote anymore because people didn't want me promoting anymore because they were afraid I'd take their job. Or I was used and abused because they knew I'd do anything. But I never changed my teaching of my father. I maintained that belief and that philosophy because I knew from all the books he had given me when I was younger, that was the philosophy those people in those books lived by. So finally get this opportunity, $10 an hour. Woohoo! Well, I showed up every day like I was the owner. I had the cleanest truck. I armor all my tires every morning before pulling into the parking lot. I cleaned my truck every day and then did a deep clean on the weekends. I showed up in my uniform like I was going to a military inspection, and I got here first. And it's funny because the days when I started getting here earlier, the owner started coming earlier. You're not supposed to beat the owner to work. It was the philosophy back then. But I came and I promoted. I promoted to service manager in 10 months. Now, here's the funny thing. I dropped out of trade school because I got this job and I was learning more here than I was in trade school. I was now a service manager of an HVAC service department, managing technicians that knew a heck of a lot more than I did. But what they didn't know is people management, and what they didn't have was the mindset you needed to manage. So that's another takeaway. Make sure you have the right mindset. You can't have a victim mentality. You can't have an entitlement mentality. If you are a victim and you're entitled, you will go nowhere in life. You know who loves victim entitlement mentality? personal injury lawyers, ambulance chasers. They love that shit. If you got that, just go make your career working with them. They're looking for those people. If you really want to do something powerful in life, stop being a victim and stop having entitlement. The world owes you nothing. Your employer owes you nothing. You owe yourself everything. And if it's going to be, it's up to me, is the philosophy you have to live by. That's what I live by. That's why what I'm speaking to, and I'm not speaking to the poo-pooers out there. That's a technical term. You can look it up. ChatGPT that. I'm not talking to you. If you're listening to this, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the person that's listening to this that says, I want to be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do great things. I want to leave my mark in my industry. That's who I'm talking to. And why this is important is because you can do it. If I can do it, if I went through what I went through, you can do it. It's not about the smartest. It's not about the richest. It's not about the one that has the most opportunity. It's about the one that perseveres and keeps going and going and going and going. Now, listen, I eventually got the opportunity to buy General Air Conditioning along with my business partner, Francisco Rodriguez. We could end the story there. Happy ending, right? Oh, wow. Woo. Now, I will tell you, I wrote on the napkin that I wanted to be able to buy my own business. The time that I wanted to buy my own business was the 5 years later, and I wanted to do it by the time I was a certain age, which would have been January of 2018. I bought the business. Francisco and I closed on the business in April of 2018. Is that chance? Is that just dumb luck? No, I wrote down what I want. I just didn't say it. I wrote it down. I put it out to the universe, and I showed up every day to make things happen. Got the chance to buy the business. We bought the business, closed on it 2018. I'd like to tell you I rode off into the sunset, and everything was rainbows and sunshine. But guess what? Now I'm a business owner, and there were dark days ahead because owning a business, things change. Things get complicated. When I was the general manager, I woke up every day knowing I could leave. I could walk away. I could decide I wanted to go explore Europe, find myself, whatever. I couldn't do it. I mean, I could do it. Now I can't do it. Once I became an owner, literally, I went to bed one night knowing I could walk away because I was just an employee. I woke up the next morning, paperwork signed, knowing I own the business. It's a legal entity. I'm legally tied to it, as is my partner. I have families to feed. I have a payroll to make. Before, if we couldn't make payroll, that wasn't my problem. I mean, personally, I took it on as my problem, but it had no impact on me financially. Now you can't make payroll. Well, you better be prepared to take a second mortgage out on your house. You better be prepared to tap into your retirement savings, which I had already done in the dry cleaning business. But you know what? I wasn't going to let any of that deter me because those are the normal challenges you're going to face as a business owner. Do you know I know what it's like to walk in on a Monday morning knowing that our operating account has $7,000 in it, and on Thursday I need to make a $75,000 payroll, not to mention everything else that has to be done in between that. And that is not an exaggeration. I have literally walked in here. There was a period of time we were really struggling. I walked in, $7,000 in the account. The checks had cleared, everything had happened, and I'm just thinking, how am I going to make that payroll? Now, if you're a business owner, you're going to have a lot of faith, and you're going to say, I'm going to make that payroll. You're never going to say to yourself, there's no way I can make that payroll. Oh, my God, it's a disaster. I should have never done this. The only answer is, I'm going to make payroll. And I got to tell you, we always made payroll. I don't know how, but we did. And I can also tell you, I've had some very good relationships, dear friends, that financially were able to assist me in short-term loans at times. So that's the other lesson, your relationships, your network. How do you develop a strong network and develop those relationships of people that will support you in a time of need? You have to build trust. You have to stay true to your word. Your word has to be your bond, right? Those are just some simple lessons in business. And I got to tell you, business is not easy, but man, business is awesome. Business is awesome. It's difficult to get there. Let me tell you a story, and I'm going to try and tell it without getting emotional. I don't think I've ever told this without getting emotional. So I'm in the CEO peer group, And, to buy the business and to get some of the financing and some of the deals I needed to with some of our creditors, I had to take out personal guarantee. And in the personal guarantee, I put my house up as collateral. And so I'm in this group, and we have a speaker. And the speaker tells the story of his business. He had done the same thing. He had a much, much bigger business. And he tells a story of how he was sitting in a room with a bunch of bankruptcy attorneys. I think there was probably 5 or 6 of them, if I recall. The other person in that room with him at the table was his wife. And, he said it was the first time his wife heard that they could lose the house. And he's like, don't ever let your spouse be in that position. And he said, if you take nothing else away from what I tell you today, take this. And that is, if your house is on the line, go home and tell your spouse. Don't let them find out how my spouse found out. So I leave there. I'm like, yeah, okay. Not a big deal. We could lose the house. So I'm like, that's fine. Easy conversation. Well, I go home, and I'm going to tell my wife this. Well, I had an easier time talking to my daughters about the birds and the bees than I did this conversation. And so I said to my wife, I said, hey, babe, I got to talk to you about something. This is emotional. She said, well, yeah. I said, we could lose the house. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, we could lose the house if I fail. She says, fail what? I said, business. I said, I did it without you knowing, but I put the house up as collateral because I needed to get financing and get lines of credit and stuff. And so I said, if I fail, we lose the house. She looked at me and she said, do we lose the kids? I said, no. She said, do we lose each other? I said, no. She paused for a minute and she said, well, get your head out of your ass. You're not going to fail, and go do what you know how to do. And in that moment, next lesson, if you're going to go into business, make sure you have a partner in your life, if you have a partner, that will ride or die with you. Ride or die. If you don't have that, it's going to be difficult. And all you have to do is look at the statistics. Look at the divorce rate of people in business, of business owners. It's significant because it is not easy. So make sure, if you put the house on the line, you tell your spouse. 2, it's ride or die. If they're not all in, think twice about going all in, because if one's all in and the other one's not all in, it's going to be challenging. And business is hard enough on its own. You need 100%, you need 120% support at home. One of the most powerful things I've ever realized, and I think one of the things that gives me the greatest strength, and that is I realized that if I lose everything, not including my wife and my children, if I lose everything tomorrow, I will start over, and I will be back and beyond and better than where I am now. And if you can have that belief that you know that you can start over from zero, if need be, you are unstoppable, you are unbreakable, because the thing that stops us, the thing that slows us down, the thing that prevents us from doing our thing is the fear of losing. It's not so much the fear of failure, it's the fear of losing what we have, the fear of going into an uncomfortable zone. Starting over is incredibly uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be lonely. That's why if you are in a relationship, make sure they're ride or die. And if you can do that, there's no reason you can't be a successful business owner as well. I want to share the last lesson. And this lesson, I coached my son when he was real little. He flag football. I coached his team, and all his friends from school were in it. And it's so funny because these kids were so young, and everybody wanted to run the ball, and everybody wanted their opportunity, and everybody got their opportunity. But I'm going to tell you, I teach winning at a young age. So even at that age, everybody got time to run the ball. But if you weren't good at running the ball, you weren't going to run the ball when it mattered, right? Because at the end of the day, Not everybody gets a trophy. Not everybody wins. But I was going to teach those kids to be good winners and good losers. But the importance of having fun and winning. You can do both. These kids would cry very easily. And not all of them, but this one kid, he started crying. And he started going off the field, and I grabbed him, and I pulled him back. And then we broke the huddle. And I remember saying to this kid, and he's crying. And I said to him, listen to me. It's okay to cry, but don't waste precious tears on stupid shit, which is what he was doing, right? I mean, he was crying over something so stupid. I'm like, that, don't waste the tears. If you're going to cry, make it meaningful. So that's my final lesson. And with that said, I hope you got something out of this episode. This was a quick high level of my journey. And I've gone through it. I've been in the trenches. I've been in the ups and the downs. And I've done just about everything you can imagine. I didn't even touch the surface of the jobs I've done. But I always knew, and I've never doubted, that I will be successful. And to this day, I know greater success awaits me. And I hope your takeaway from this is you can do it if you want to do it. You have the power. You have the ability. Timing is everything. It's not always the right time to run out and take on the world. But it's always the right time to prepare for that time to run out and take on the world. And you can do it. I hope if you're somebody out there thinking, I want to start my own business, you had enough takeaways here that you can apply to help you on that journey, because it is a journey without a destination. And with that said, I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you think somebody could benefit from this show, listening to it, I appreciate you sharing it with them. Appreciate any comments, feedback, and reviews. And until next time, win the day and be great.
I don't wear a suit and tie, don't need letters by my name, just a hammer, grit, and a vision, and a fire you can't tame. So raise a glass to the ones who build this country hand by hand. I wouldn't trade a single day as a blue-collar working man.
The Tradepreneur Show is brought to you by Patrick Summers. Executive production by David Field, producer. Producing and editing by David Field and Kristen George. Original theme song, Blue Collar Working Man, written by Patrick Summers, created using Suno AI. To be a guest on The Tradepreneur Show or for sponsorship and partnership opportunities, contact Patrick Summers. Patrick at thetradepreneurshow.com.